The notification buzz from my phone cut through the silence of our pristine kitchen like a blade. Another birthday reminder. Not mine, of course. Never mine. This one was for Jessica from Vanessa's yoga class, complete with party planning suggestions and gift ideas my wife had meticulously entered into our shared calendar app. My 40th birthday had passed 3 days ago. Unmarked, unmentioned, vanished into the digital void like the 7 that came before it. I stared at the glowing screen, watching the notification fade, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not surprise. I'd stopped expecting surprises years ago. This was something else. Something final. "Alex, did you see my keys?" Vanessa breezed into the kitchen, her auburn hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. She wore her power suit like armor, the navy blue fabric crisp and unforgiving. At 39, she still commanded every room she entered, still made heads turn at the advertising agency where she'd clawed her way to senior vice president. "Counter by the coffee maker," I replied, not looking up from my laptop. The morning light streaming through our floor-to-ceiling windows cast harsh shadows across my screen, but I could still make out the calendar grid that had become my obsession. Rows of carefully curated celebrations, each one a small knife twist in my gut. She grabbed her keys with practiced efficiency, already mentally at her first meeting. "I'll be late tonight. Client dinner with the Morrison account." "Of course you will be." Something in my tone made her pause. For a moment, her green eyes focused on me with the kind of attention she usually reserved for quarterly reports. What's that supposed to mean? I could have said nothing, should have said nothing. But 8 years of swallowed words had left a bitter taste that no amount of morning coffee could wash away. "Just observing a pattern," I said, closing the laptop with deliberate care. "Funny how your client dinners always coincide with dates that might require actual wifing." Her laugh was sharp, dismissive. "Wifing? Really, Alex? What are you, 12? 40, actually, as of 3 days ago." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. I watched her face, cataloging the micro-expressions that flitted across her features. Confusion first, then calculation, then the practice mask of concern that she wore like makeup. "Oh God, honey, I'm so sorry. Work has been absolutely insane and—" "Save it." I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a sound like fingernails on glass. "We both know this isn't about work being insane. This is about you being intentionally forgetful." "That's not fair." "Fair?" I pulled out my phone, fingers dancing across the screen with muscle memory born of countless late-night documentation sessions. "You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about Jessica's surprise party that you spent 3 weeks planning. Or your college roommate's kid's birthday bash. You know, the one where you hired a pony." "Language, Alex." "Or how about your assistant's baby shower? The one where you handcrafted 30 gift bags and spent $400 on decorations for someone you barely tolerate?" Each example hit its mark. I could see her composure cracking, the perfect facade developing hairline fractures. But Vanessa hadn't climbed the corporate ladder by crumbling under pressure. "Those are different," she said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone she used with difficult clients. "Those are social obligations, professional networking. You wouldn't understand the nuances. But your husband's birthday isn't a social obligation?" "Of course it is, but what, Vanessa? But I'm not important enough? But I don't provide the right kind of networking opportunities? But acknowledging my existence doesn't advance your career?" She checked her watch, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times. The universal signal that this conversation was cutting into her precious schedule. "We'll talk about this tonight," she said, already moving toward the garage door. "I really do have to go." "No." The word came out harder than I'd intended, stopping her mid-stride. "We won't talk about this tonight, because tonight you'll come home with some crisis that needs your immediate attention, or some colleague drama that requires hours of analysis, or some new project that absolutely cannot wait until tomorrow." "Alex, you're being ridiculous." "Am I? When was the last time we had dinner together on a weeknight? When was the last time you asked about my day and actually listened to the answer? When was the last time you treated me like I was more than just another household appliance that occasionally needs maintenance?" Her phone buzzed. Without thinking, she glanced at it. The gesture was so automatic, so ingrained, that I don't think she even realized she'd done it. But I saw it. I saw the moment her attention shifted from our marriage to whatever urgent matter demanded her focus. And something inside me broke. Not dramatically, not with the satisfying crack of a tree falling in a storm, more like the quiet snap of a rubber band stretched too far for too long. "Go," I said quietly. "Your real priorities are calling." She hesitated at the door, her hand on the handle. For a second, I thought she might turn around, might fight for us, might choose her husband over her inbox for once in 8 years. But the moment passed. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving me alone with the morning light and the bitter taste of truth. I opened my laptop again, navigating to the folder I'd been building for 3 years. Screenshots, calendar exports, financial records, text message threads, a digital autopsy of our marriage, cataloged with the same attention to detail that had made me one of the city's top creative directors. The evidence was damning, not just the forgotten birthdays, but the pattern they revealed, the calculated neglect, the systematic erasure of my importance in her life. My phone buzzed again. Another birthday reminder, this one for someone I'd never heard of. I stared at the notification, then opened our shared calendar app and scrolled to my birthday. There it was, or rather, there it wasn't. The date was blocked. Not just unmarked, but actively blocked from displaying any information. I'd suspected it for months, but seeing the proof still felt like a punch to the gut. She wasn't forgetting my birthday. She was hiding it from herself. I took a screenshot, adding it to my growing collection. Then I did something I'd never done before. I opened a new browser window and searched for divorce attorneys in our area. The morning light shifted, casting new shadows across the kitchen. But for the first time in 8 years, I felt like I was stepping out of the darkness. The Riverside Bank branch smelled like coffee and ambition, all polished marble and whispered conversations about investment portfolios. I sat across from Janet Morrison, a woman whose gray hair and kind eyes masked the sharp financial mind that had been recommended by 3 different colleagues. "So you want to open a separate account," she said, reviewing the paperwork I'd filled out. "Joint accounts can be complicated. Smart to have some independence." "Something like that?" I signed my name with careful precision, each letter a small act of rebellion. "I need the statement sent to my office address, not my home." Janet nodded without judgment. In her line of work, she'd probably seen every variation of marital financial maneuvering. "We can set up direct deposit for your salary. What percentage would you like transferred?" 50%. The number felt significant, not enough to trigger immediate suspicion, but sufficient to give me options. "Starting next paycheck." "And the existing joint accounts?" "Leave them alone for now. I just want backup options." That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of careful preparation, of building an escape route one small step at a time. The ghost protocol, I'd started calling it in my head. The art of disappearing while standing right in front of someone. Now I sat in my home office, the blue glow of multiple monitors painting the walls in shifting patterns. It was past midnight, but sleep had become a stranger since my birthday revelation. Instead, I'd thrown myself into documentation with the obsessive focus that had made me legendary in advertising circles. The evidence was spread across my screens like a digital crime scene. Calendar screenshots showing the systematic blocking of my birthday. Bank statements revealing her secret credit card, the one with my birthday as the password, because apparently my existence was only worth remembering when it came to security questions. $34,000 in debt, spa treatments, weekend getaways with her girlfriends, designer clothes, expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never heard of, all charged to a card that technically made me liable for the debt. My phone lit up with a text from Vanessa. "Working late again, don't wait up." It was the same message I'd received every night this week. I'd started taking screenshots of those too, building a timeline of her absence. Not because I thought she was having an affair, though that was certainly possible, but because I wanted to document the pattern of neglect. I opened her laptop. She'd left it on the kitchen counter, unlocked and unguarded. In the old days, I would have respected her privacy. But the old days were before I discovered that my wife had turned forgetting me into an art form. Her email was a masterclass in social orchestration, detailed party planning threads for colleagues I'd never met, gift consultations for friends who barely acknowledged my existence, restaurant reservations for celebrations that didn't include me, but it was her personal journal that made my blood run cold. She kept it in a password-protected document buried in a folder labeled Tax Documents 2019, a place she knew I'd never look. The password was, predictably, my birthday. The entries went back years. Clinical observations about our marriage written in the same tone she used for client assessments. March 15th. Alex seemed upset about the missed dinner. Need to schedule something low effort to reset his expectations. Maybe takeout and a movie. June 3rd. He's asking about vacation plans again. Should probably book something domestic and brief. Can use it for social media content. August 22nd. Birthday situation handled perfectly. He brought it up once, but didn't push when I deflected. The key is making him feel guilty for having expectations. November 10th. Discovered that if I schedule something for myself on his birthday, he won't complain. He actually seems relieved not to be the center of attention. This approach maintains control without requiring actual effort. I read that last entry 3 times, each pass driving the knife deeper. She hadn't been forgetting my birthday. She'd been strategically erasing it. The front door opened downstairs, followed by the familiar sounds of Vanessa's return. Heels clicking on hardwood, keys hitting the counter, the soft whoosh of her settling onto the couch. I closed her laptop and crept to the top of the stairs, listening. "I know, right?" Her voice carried up from the living room. She was on the phone, probably with Tessa, her work wife and primary enabler. He actually got upset about his birthday, like seriously upset. A pause while Tessa responded. "I know, 40 years old and still pouting about not getting a party. It's honestly embarrassing." Her laugh was sharp, cutting. "The thing is, if I make a big deal about it now, he'll expect it every year. Better to keep expectations low." Another pause. "Exactly. Men are like dogs. You give them treats randomly, they stay grateful. You give them treats on schedule, they start demanding them." She was moving around downstairs, probably getting ready for bed. The key is making them feel lucky for whatever attention they get. I gripped the banister, my knuckles white in the darkness. "Oh, Bryce texted earlier," she continued, and something in her tone shifted, became warmer, more intimate. "He wants to take me to that new place downtown next week." Bryce. I knew that name. Bryce Morgan, CEO of some tech startup that had been courting Vanessa's agency for months. Divorced, wealthy, drove a matte black Porsche that he parked like he owned the world. I know I shouldn't, but he's so different from Alex. He actually pays attention when I talk. He remembers things I tell him. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He sent flowers to my office yesterday, just because. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't just about forgotten birthdays. This was about replacement. She'd been auditioning my successor while systematically devaluing our marriage. "I should go," she said. "Alex might be awake." I crept back to my office, my heart hammering against my ribs. By the time she came upstairs, I was back at my computer, apparently absorbed in work. "Still up?" she asked from the doorway. "Big presentation tomorrow." I didn't turn around, didn't trust my face to maintain neutrality. "Don't stay up too late." She kissed the top of my head, a gesture that once would have warmed me. Now it felt like a lie made flesh. After she went to bed, I opened a new document and began typing. Not evidence this time, but strategy. If Vanessa wanted to play games with calendars and expectations, I could play too. But my rules would be different. I started with the joint credit cards, calling the customer service lines and requesting additional security measures. New passwords, new security questions, alerts for any purchases over $100. Then I moved on to our shared streaming accounts, social media profiles, and cloud storage. One by one, I began changing our digital life, taking control of the systems she'd used to erase me. By dawn, I'd laid the groundwork for something bigger. Not just revenge, that was too simple, too crude. What I wanted was justice, the kind that came with consequences and understanding, the kind that would make her feel as invisible as she'd made me. The Morrison Agency's annual Spring Mixer was the kind of event Vanessa lived for. 200 of the city's marketing elite packed into the downtown Marriott ballroom, networking with the desperate intensity of sharks scenting blood. I'd attended every year for the past 6, playing the role of supportive husband while she worked the room like a political candidate. This year felt different. "Alex!" Tessa materialized beside me at the bar, her smile bright and predatory. "So good to see you. Vanessa said you almost didn't make it tonight." "Did she?" I accepted my whiskey from the bartender, savoring the burn. "Funny, she didn't mention that to me." Tessa's laugh was too loud, too forced. "You know how she is. Always worried you're working too hard." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Between you and me, I think she's been a little stressed lately. Maybe you could plan something special for her. A surprise?" The irony was so thick I could taste it. A surprise. What an interesting concept. Maybe for her birthday next month. I know she'd love... "Tell me, Tessa," I interrupted, turning to face her fully. "When's my birthday?" She blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Your birthday? Take your time. Think about it." Her confusion was genuine, which somehow made it worse. In 6 years of friendship by proxy, she'd never once been told when I was born, never been invited to celebrate, never been asked to remember. Alex, I'm not good with dates. It was 3 weeks ago." I took another sip of whiskey, watching her face cycle through embarrassment, realization, and something that might have been pity. "Vanessa didn't mention it? Oh God, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. We were so busy with the Henderson campaign and..." "Don't." I held up a hand, stopping her mid-excuse. don't apologize for her. Don't make excuses for her. Just don't. Across the room, Vanessa was holding court near the silent auction display, her laughter ringing out like wind chimes in a hurricane. She wore the black cocktail dress I'd bought her for Christmas, the one she'd never worn until tonight. For a moment, our eyes met across the crowded ballroom. She smiled and waved, the picture of the devoted wife. I didn't wave back. Alex? Tessa was still talking, but her words sounded distant, muffled. Are you okay? Actually, I'm better than I've been in years. I finished my drink and set the glass on the bar with deliberate care. Excuse me, I need to make a phone call. I walked out of the ballroom, through the hotel lobby, and into the cool evening air. The city hummed around me, alive with possibility and promise. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd memorized but never used. Jules? It's Alex. Are you free for a drink? Jules Brennan had been my best friend in college and my best man at my wedding. Somewhere along the way, as Vanessa's social calendar consumed more and more of our time, we drifted apart. Not from any dramatic falling out, but from the slow erosion of neglect. Alex? Jesus, it's been forever. Where are you? Downtown, and I need to talk to someone who isn't insane. His laugh was warm, familiar. Rough night? You could say that. Meet me at Murphy's in 20. Already on my way. Murphy's Tavern was everything the Marriott Ballroom wasn't. Dimly lit, unpretentious, filled with people who measured success in simpler terms than quarterly revenue. Jules was already there when I arrived, his red hair grayer than I remembered, but his grin unchanged. You look like hell, he said, raising his beer in greeting. Thanks. That's exactly what my ego needed to hear. We claimed a corner booth, and for the first time in weeks, I felt my shoulders relax. Jules had that effect on people, a natural ease that made confession feel less like weakness and more like common sense. So, he said after we'd ordered, what's eating you? I told him everything. The forgotten birthdays, the secret credit card, the journal entries, the phone call with Tessa. With each revelation, his expression grew darker. 8 years, he said when I finished. She's been doing this for 8 years? Systematically, deliberately. She's been training me to expect nothing so she could give me nothing without feeling guilty about it. Jules was quiet for a long moment, processing. Finally, he shook his head. I always thought there was something off about her. The way she'd monopolize conversations, steer everything back to her career, her achievements, her problems. You never said anything. Would you have listened? You were so in love with her, man. Completely gone. He was right. In the early days, Vanessa's ambition had been intoxicating. Her drive, her confidence, her absolute certainty that she deserved the world's attention. I'd been proud to be chosen by someone so dynamic, so successful, I'd mistaken narcissism for strength. What are you going to do? Jules asked. I don't know yet. A part of me wants to confront her, lay out all the evidence, force her to acknowledge what she's done. And the other part? I smiled, and even I could hear the edge in it. The other part wants to disappear. Just stop participating in my own erasure. What does that look like? I've already started. Separate bank account, new passwords, documentation of everything. I've been removing myself from our shared obligations one piece at a time. Jules raised his eyebrows. That's actually pretty smart. She can't miss what she never valued in the first place. Exactly. I felt a surge of something I hadn't experienced in years. Excitement about the future. She spent 8 years teaching me that I'm invisible. Maybe it's time to see how she likes being married to a ghost. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Where are you? People are asking about you. I showed the message to Jules, who snorted. People are asking about you? Not I'm worried about you or I miss you. People are asking? She's concerned about appearances. Always has been. I typed back, had to leave, emergency at work. It wasn't entirely a lie. My marriage was definitely experiencing an emergency. You know what the worst part is? I said, pocketing the phone. I keep thinking about all the times I made excuses for her. All the times I told myself she was just busy, just stressed, just going through a phase. Classic enabler behavior. I should know. I did the same thing with my ex. But there's something liberating about finally seeing it clearly, like taking off glasses you didn't know were dirty. We talked until last call, 2 old friends reconnecting over the wreckage of my marriage. By the time I got home, Vanessa was already asleep, her phone charging on the nightstand next to a glass of water and her sleeping pills. I stood in the doorway, watching her sleep. She looked peaceful, unburdened by guilt or regret. In her dreams, she was probably still the hero of her own story, the successful executive married to a supportive but ultimately forgettable husband. Tomorrow, I decided, would be different. Tomorrow, I would start the process of making myself unforgettable. The first crack in Vanessa's carefully constructed world came on a Tuesday morning, disguised as a calendar notification. I'd been planning it for weeks, ever since I'd discovered her pattern of blocking my birthday while meticulously tracking everyone else's. The beauty of digital calendars was their democratic nature. Anyone with access could create events, send invitations, make announcements, and I still had access to everything. Vanessa Reed cordially invites you to celebrate her husband Alex's surprise 40th birthday party. The notification went out to her entire contact list at exactly 9 a.m. when I knew she'd be in her weekly staff meeting. Saturday, April 15th, 7 p.m. at the Reed residence. Please RSVP by Thursday. Can't wait to celebrate this amazing man. My phone started ringing within minutes. Alex? It was her assistant, Madison, sounding confused. I just got an invitation to your birthday party. Vanessa didn't mention anything about planning a party, and it's not on her calendar. That's strange, I said, injecting just the right amount of bewilderment into my voice. Maybe she wanted it to be a surprise for me, too? But your birthday was 3 weeks ago, wasn't it? I remember seeing it on your Facebook. You'd think she'd remember that, wouldn't you? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Madison was smart enough to recognize a minefield when she stepped in one. I'll check with her and get back to you, she said finally. You do that. By lunch, my phone had received 15 calls and 37 text messages. Vanessa's entire social and professional network was trying to make sense of the invitation. Some were confused about the date, others were confused about the location, a few were confused about my existence entirely, but the call I was waiting for came at 1:47 p.m. What did you do? Vanessa's voice was pure venom, all pretense of civility stripped away. I'm sorry. What are you referring to? Don't play dumb with me, Alex. The party invitation, the one that went out to my entire contact list, the one I never sent. Oh, that! I was wondering about that, too. Madison called this morning asking about it. I told her you must have wanted it to be a surprise. You know I didn't send that. Do I? You've been so secretive lately, planning things without telling me. I thought maybe you'd finally decided to acknowledge my existence. I could hear her breathing, sharp and controlled. She was in damage control mode, trying to figure out how to minimize the embarrassment. How did you access my calendar? Same password I've always had. You never changed it after giving me access years ago. I paused, letting that sink in. Of course, I never changed mine either. Amazing how much you can learn about someone when you actually pay attention to their digital life. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. I had access to everything. Her emails, her calendar, her social media accounts. All the tools she'd used to orchestrate her perfect life were now weapons I could turn against her. Delete it, she said. Delete the invitation right now. I can't do that. People have already responded. Tessa's bringing a cake. Your mom bought you a hostess gift. Greg's driving down from Portland. I let my voice take on a tone of mock concern. It would be incredibly rude to cancel now. People will think you're having some kind of breakdown. Alex, I swear to God. What? You'll forget my birthday? Too late? You'll ignore me at social events? Already happening. You'll treat me like I'm invisible? I laughed, and even I was surprised by how bitter it sounded. Vanessa, you've already played all your cards. I'm just returning the favor. She hung up on me. Within an hour, she'd changed all her passwords and revoked my access to her accounts. But the damage was done. The invitations were out, the RSVPs were coming in, and her carefully maintained image as the perfect wife was developing cracks. I spent the afternoon fielding calls from confused guests and playing the role of the bewildered husband. Yes, I was surprised by the party. No, I didn't know why she'd scheduled it 3 weeks after my actual birthday. Yes, it did seem a little strange, but you know how busy she's been at work. Each conversation was a small act of sabotage, planting seeds of doubt about Vanessa's competence and consideration. I never said anything directly damaging. I didn't have to. The situation spoke for itself. By evening, the narrative had taken on a life of its own. Vanessa's friends were calling each other, trying to make sense of the confusion. Her colleagues were questioning her attention to detail. Her mother had left 3 increasingly concerned voicemails. I was in my office when Vanessa came home, her heels striking the hardwood like gunshots. She appeared in my doorway, still in her work clothes, but with her composure completely shattered. Congratulations, she said. You've successfully humiliated me in front of everyone I know. Have I? How? By making me look incompetent. By making it seem like I don't know my own husband's birthday. But you don't know my birthday. You've spent 8 years actively avoiding it. That's not... She stopped, realizing she was about to admit to something she'd never acknowledged. That's not the point, isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, the only thing I've done is create an opportunity for you to celebrate your husband, something most wives would consider a privilege, not a humiliation. She stared at me, and I could see her trying to process this new version of me. The compliant, understanding Alex was gone, replaced by someone who fought back. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want you to throw me a birthday party. I want you to smile and play the loving wife for 3 hours. I want you to pretend, just once, that being married to me isn't a burden you're forced to bear. And if I refuse?" I turned back to my computer, dismissing her with the same casual indifference she'd shown me for years. "Then everyone you've ever met will know exactly what kind of wife you really are." She stood there for another moment, her breath coming in short, angry bursts. Then she turned and walked away, her heels echoing through the house like a countdown timer. Saturday was going to be very interesting. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that made everything look like a magazine spread. I spent the morning preparing for my own birthday party, a surreal experience that would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. Vanessa had thrown herself into the preparations with the manic energy of someone trying to salvage a disaster. She'd ordered catering from the expensive place downtown, bought decorations that screamed last-minute panic purchase, and even hired a bartender to handle the drinks. "The flowers look great," I said, admiring the elaborate arrangements she'd scattered throughout the house. "Very thoughtful of you to remember that I like sunflowers." She looked up from where she was arranging appetizers, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "I'm full of surprises." "You certainly are." The first guests arrived at 7 sharp, Tessa and her husband Mark, bearing the promised cake and expressions of barely contained curiosity. Tessa hugged me with the enthusiasm of someone performing for an audience. "Happy birthday, Alex. I can't believe Vanessa kept this such a secret. She's usually terrible at surprises." "She's full of hidden talents," I replied, catching Vanessa's eye across the room. Her smile never wavered, but I could see the fury burning behind it. More guests arrived in waves, colleagues from the agency, neighbors from our street, friends from Vanessa's various social circles, people I'd met at dozens of other parties but who'd never been invited to celebrate me. The conversations were illuminating. "I had no idea your birthday was in March," said Jennifer from accounting. "Vanessa always talks about everyone else's birthdays at work. She organized that huge surprise party for Brad last month." "She's very thoughtful that way," I agreed. "It's so weird that she scheduled this 3 weeks late," added Dave from the creative department. "That's not like her at all. She's usually so organized. Maybe she had a lot on her mind." Each interaction was a small revelation, both for me and for the guests. They were starting to see the pattern, the systematic way I'd been excluded from Vanessa's world, and their growing awareness was written all over their faces. The most uncomfortable moment came when Vanessa's mother arrived. Patricia Dayton was 73 years old and sharp as a blade. She'd never particularly liked me, but she'd always maintained the pretense of family harmony. Tonight, however, she looked troubled. "Alex, dear," she said, pulling me aside near the kitchen, "I have to ask, is everything all right between you and Vanessa?" "What makes you ask?" "Well, this party, for one thing. The timing seems odd. And when I called her yesterday to ask what you might like as a gift, she couldn't give me a single suggestion. Not one thing you might enjoy." I felt a stab of vindication mixed with sadness. Even her mother had noticed. "We've been going through a rough patch," I admitted, "but I'm hoping tonight might be a new beginning." Patricia studied my face with the intensity of a woman who'd spent decades reading people. "I see. Well, for what it's worth, I think she's been taking you for granted. A good husband is hard to find." "Thank you, Patricia. That means a lot." As the evening progressed, I found myself genuinely enjoying the party. Not because of Vanessa's performance, though she was playing the role of devoted wife with Oscar-worthy commitment, but because I was finally the center of attention in my own life. People were asking about my work, my hobbies, my opinions. They were treating me like a person worth knowing instead of an accessory to Vanessa's success. It was intoxicating. "Speech, speech," someone called out as we gathered around the cake. Vanessa's face went pale. A speech wasn't part of her damage control plan. "Oh, I don't think," she started. "Great idea," I interrupted, raising my wine glass. "I'd love to say a few words." The room fell quiet, expectant. I could feel Vanessa's tension radiating from across the room like heat from a fire. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began, my voice carrying easily through the sudden silence. "It means more to me than you know to have so many wonderful people here to celebrate." Murmurs of agreement, warm smiles. So far, so safe. You know, birthdays are funny things. They mark the passage of time, but they also mark our place in other people's lives. They're a measure of how much we matter to the people we love. Vanessa's smile was becoming strained. For the past 8 years, I'd started to wonder if I mattered at all, if maybe I'd become invisible, forgotten, erased from the calendar of importance. The room was getting uncomfortable now. People were glancing at each other, sensing undercurrents they couldn't quite identify. But tonight, seeing all of you here, I realized that I do matter, that I am worth celebrating, that my existence in this world and in this marriage has value. I raised my glass higher, my eyes finding Vanessa's across the room. So here's to new beginnings, to being seen, being heard, being remembered, and to my beautiful wife, who organized this wonderful party to show me exactly how much I mean to her. The applause was polite but uncertain. People weren't sure what they'd just witnessed, but they knew it was more than a simple birthday toast. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, the comments grew more pointed. "That was an interesting speech," Tessa said as she gathered her purse. "Very heartfelt." "I meant every word." "I'm sure you did." She glanced toward Vanessa, who was saying goodbye to the last of the neighbors. "Maybe we should all get together soon, just the 4 of us. It's been too long." "I'd like that, though you might want to check with Vanessa about her calendar. She's very particular about scheduling." After the last guest left, Vanessa and I stood in our living room, surrounded by the debris of the party. Empty glasses, crumpled napkins, the lingering smell of celebration, and something else, something that might have been the death of pretense. "Well," she said finally, "I hope you're satisfied." "Actually, I am. It was a lovely party. Very well organized, considering the short notice." "You know that's not what I mean." "Then say what you mean, Vanessa. For once in 8 years, say exactly what you mean." She stared at me for a long moment, her carefully constructed mask finally slipping. "I mean that you've humiliated me, made me look like a terrible wife in front of everyone we know. I didn't make you look like anything. I just created a situation where people could see what kind of wife you actually are. And what kind is that? The kind who forgets her husband exists until it becomes socially inconvenient." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Vanessa picked up her wineglass and headed toward the stairs. "I'm going to bed," she said. "We'll talk about this tomorrow." "No," I called after her. "We won't." She paused on the bottom step, looking back at me with confusion. "We won't talk about this tomorrow, or next week, or next month, because talking requires 2 people who respect each other enough to listen, and we passed that point a long time ago." For the first time since I'd known her, Vanessa looked uncertain, vulnerable, almost human. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that this party was your last chance to prove that our marriage mattered to you, and instead of rising to the occasion, you spent the evening playing damage control." I began collecting empty glasses, suddenly exhausted by the weight of 8 years of disappointment. "Tomorrow, I'm going to start making some changes. Big ones. And for the first time in our marriage, I'm not going to ask your permission." She stood there for another moment, then climbed the stairs without another word. I finished cleaning up alone, which seemed fitting. After all, I'd been alone in this marriage for years. It was time to make it official. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday, delivered to Vanessa's office by a courier who probably had no idea he was carrying 8 years of accumulated resentment. I'd timed it perfectly, right in the middle of her weekly staff meeting, when her entire team would witness her receiving the manila envelope that would change everything. I know this because Madison called me 20 minutes later, her voice shaky with shock. "Alex, I think there's been some kind of mistake. Vanessa just received some legal documents, and she's not taking it well." "What kind of documents?" I asked, though I knew exactly what kind. "Divorce papers. But that can't be right, can it? You 2 just had that lovely party last weekend." "Did we? I remember a performance. Whether it was lovely is a matter of perspective." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Madison, are you still there?" Yes, I'm here. Alex, what's happening?" "Vanessa's locked herself in her office, and she's making phone calls. Angry phone calls. She's probably calling lawyers. That's what people do when they realize their actions have consequences." My phone started ringing before I'd even hung up with Madison. Vanessa's name flashed on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. On the 4th call, I answered. "Hello, Vanessa?" "You bastard." Her voice was pure venom, stripped of all pretense. "How dare you embarrass me like this at work?" "Embarrass you? I had legal documents delivered. That's how divorce works." "You could have told me at home. You could have had the decency to discuss this privately." Like you had the decency to discuss forgetting my birthday for 8 years? Like you had the decency to tell me about your secret credit cards? Like you had the decency to mention Bryce Morgan before I overheard you gushing about him to Tessa? The silence stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. You've been spying on me, she said finally. I've been paying attention, something you might want to try sometime. This is insane, Alex. You can't just blow up our entire life because you're having some kind of midlife crisis. Our life? What life, Vanessa? The one where you systematically erased me from every important moment? The one where you used my birthday as a password while actively hiding it from yourself? The one where you've been auditioning my replacement while training me to be grateful for scraps? That's not... It's all documented. Every forgotten birthday, every secret purchase, every journal entry where you analyzed me like a lab rat. Did you really think I wouldn't eventually notice that you were treating our marriage like a social experiment? I could hear her breathing, sharp and panicked. She was realizing that this wasn't a tantrum or a negotiating tactic. This was the end. What do you want? She asked finally. Money? The house? What's it going to take to make this go away? I don't want your money, Vanessa. I've been financially independent for months. I don't want the house. It never felt like home anyway. I want exactly what you've been giving me for 8 years. Which is what? Nothing. I want nothing from you, nothing to do with you, and nothing to remind me that I wasted the best years of my life on someone who couldn't be bothered to remember when I was born. The papers I'd filed were comprehensive and brutal. 8 years of documented neglect, financial deception, and emotional abandonment. Her secret credit card debt, her blocked calendar entries, her journal confessions, all of it laid out in legal language that left no room for interpretation. But the most damaging evidence was the simplest, a side-by-side comparison of how she celebrated other people's birthdays versus how she treated mine, photos from elaborate parties she'd thrown for colleagues, detailed expense reports for gifts she'd bought for acquaintances, calendar screenshots showing months of planning for people she barely knew. And then, in stark contrast, 8 years of blank spaces where my birthday should have been. You're going to destroy me, she said, and for the first time I heard genuine fear in her voice. No, Vanessa, I'm going to reveal you. There's a difference. My career, my reputation. Your reputation was built on a lie. The lie that you're a caring, thoughtful person who values relationships. All I'm doing is correcting the record. Alex, please, we can fix this. I can change. I'll go to counseling. You had 8 years to change. 8 birthdays to show me that I mattered. You chose not to. I was busy. My career was demanding, and you threw a surprise party for your mailman last Christmas, Vanessa. Your mailman. But you couldn't manage a birthday dinner for your husband. The truth of it hung between us like a blade. She'd had time for everyone except me. Energy for every celebration except mine. Love for every person except the one she'd promised to cherish. I'll fight this, she said finally. I'll hire the best lawyers, and I'll fight you on everything. With what money? Your secret credit cards are maxed out, and I've already moved my income to a separate account. You can fight me if you want, but you'll be doing it broke and alone. You've been planning this for months. Years, actually. Ever since I realized that hoping for change was just another form of self-abuse. I hung up on her then, cutting off whatever desperate plea or angry threat she was about to make. My phone immediately started ringing again, but I turned it off. For the first time in 8 years, I had silence. Real silence, not the hollow quiet of being ignored, but the peaceful silence of being free. I spent the afternoon in my office, updating my resume and browsing apartment listings. The house would have to be sold, but that was fine. I'd never felt at home there anyway. It had always been Vanessa's showcase, decorated to impress her friends and colleagues rather than to provide comfort for her husband. By evening, I'd found a small loft downtown, close to work, and far from the suburban perfection that had become my prison. I put down a deposit and scheduled a move-in date for the following week. My phone had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages when I finally turned it back on. Most were from Vanessa, progressing from anger to bargaining to threats and back to anger. But a few were from other people, friends and colleagues who'd heard about the divorce and wanted to offer support. Jules had left a voicemail. Heard through the grapevine that you finally pulled the trigger. Good for you, man. You deserve better. Call me when you are ready to celebrate your freedom. Even Patricia, Vanessa's mother, had sent a text. I'm sorry it came to this, but I understand. You're a good man, Alex. Don't let her convince you otherwise. As I packed my personal belongings, books, photos from before my marriage, a few pieces of furniture that actually meant something to me, I felt lighter with each box I filled. I was shedding not just possessions, but expectations, obligations, and the crushing weight of being perpetually disappointed. The last thing I packed was my laptop, with its carefully organized folders of evidence. 8 years of documentation that had served its purpose, I wouldn't need it anymore. I was finally free to forget Vanessa as completely as she'd forgotten me, and unlike her, I was going to enjoy every minute of it.